Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? We're going to get started soon. Everyone is here now. Before we start, please, little housekeeping rules, silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate. Thank you very much. Just so we have a couple of things what we're going to be doing. If you have a question, you can either use an index card. There are folks floating around with index cards, or you can come up to the mic and ask your question. We also want you to know that we only want questions, not statements. And we'd like to keep this to state subjects if we possibly can, not so much local. If it's something federal that affects state, that's fine, but we're going to try to keep it to more state issues for these folks. They have drawn numbers from 1 through 6 to see who goes first. We will have, each one will have an opportunity for 1 minute in the beginning to introduce themselves, talk about what committees they're on briefly, and as well as tell us what area they're from, what areas their district comprises. So folks know. And you guys are, those mics, you also have to talk into those mics. Thank you for testing the mic there. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else, Mary? Are we ready? We have a student volunteer timer tonight. Jason is from AITE. And the timers we're going to give each, Beth is going to take care of this first table and Jason's going to take care of the rest. Or you guys are going to do 3 and 3, right? I believe so. Okay, so here's how this is going to go. The first question, once we get past the introductions, the first question will go to somebody number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. The question will be asked. The person who gets to answer the question will have a minute to respond, and then each person will have 30 seconds to chime in. I ask that you don't chime in every time unless you have something to add, so we can get as many questions asked as possible. Okay, everybody ready? Okay. And we will go the back way. Wherever we start with, we'll end up like 6 will go first. So we'll keep going through the questions. I'm sorry, never mind. Take that back. We only have a minute in the beginning. I'm confused. I've been doing too many of these the past couple of weeks. Okay, so we will start with number 1, who is Kadeem Roberts.
My number already. Kadeem Roberts, represent the 137th district. Y'all can hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Kadeem Roberts represent the 137th district. I am born and raised in Norwalk, Connecticut my whole entire life. Went through the whole entire public school systems in Norwalk as well. Got a wonderful degree at Virginia Union, a historical Black university down south. Came back, got a master's at Fairfield University. And was on the city council for 2 years and was blessed to be at the Capitol now. The committees I chair, or the committees I am on, are housing, education, and judiciary. The vice chair of housing in the state of Connecticut in the House, and I just started. We created the first End Homelessness Caucus in the state of Connecticut, which is great. So we've been doing a lot of work, and thank you.
Okay, next is Bob Duff.
Good evening, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks to the League for putting this together, our annual preview of the legislative session. Born and raised here in the city of Norwalk, 5th generation. I serve as Senate Majority Leader, and so therefore I don't serve on any policy committees any longer, but I do chair the Executive and Legislative Nominations Committee and Vice Chair, bless you, of the Legislative Management Committee.
Okay, next is Travis Sims.
Good evening, everyone. I'm State Representative Travis Sims from the 140th District. I also was born and raised here in Norwalk. I raised my children here. They all 5 of them went through public schools here as I did. As many of you may know, I am a 2-time world champion professional boxer. I decided to stay in Connecticut to not just be a voice for my community, but also be a leader on the common council, which I served for 10 years on the Norwalk Common Council, and now I believe I'm going on my 8th year as a state rep. So the committees I sit on is transportation, judiciary, and appropriations at the state, and I also serve as deputy speaker.
Thank you. Dominique Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the League. Thank you to everyone for coming out so we can discuss things coming up this session and get your ideas and feedback. I'm Dominique Johnson. I'm proud to serve the 143rd district, which is northeast Norwalk, Cranberry, and a little bit of we got Wolf Pit as well, a little bit of East Norwalk and the western sliver of Westport up to the river there. I'm really grateful to now work in the capacity of co-chair of the screening committee, and I'm also deputy majority leader. I serve on the judiciary committee, the environment committee, and the government administration and elections committee. We use all these acronyms. It's called GAE, but that's the big one for our elections. It's an honor to serve Norwalk. I joined the council. Kadeem and I kind of have gone through this together in the council and now up in the state house, and so we're looking forward to hearing from you tonight. Thanks again for coming out.
Thank you, Tracy Marra.
Thank you, League of Women Voters. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I am State Representative Tracy Marra. I represent the 141st. It is most of Darien, and it covers Norwalk, the Rowayton, Wilson Point area. I was not born and raised in Connecticut. I am from Kentucky originally, and have moved around several different places, but Connecticut is my home now. It's where I'm raising my children. Pharmacy is my background. I spent many years as a pharmacist. I was unable to work as a pharmacist here in the state of Connecticut for reasons we won't get into tonight, but maybe things that we need to fix in the future. And my committees are, I am ranking on the Energy Committee, which probably is top of mind for many of you all who have Eversource bills. I am also on Public Health, which works really well with my background in healthcare, and on transportation.
Thank you. Lucy Dathan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the League for hosting the event this evening. I'm Lucy Dathan. I represent part of Norwalk and part of New Canaan. It's really like West Norwalk down to Rowayton, including Broad River, Silver Mine, and part of New Canaan. I have been in the legislature starting my 8th year. I came in with Travis, and I'm proud to serve as House Chairman of the Government Oversight Committee, also on Appropriations and Human Services. I'm very actively involved in MAPOC, and so I sit as chair of one of the MAPOC subcommittees. I also sit on the FAC, which is a budgeting kind of oversight council. I have brought this evening some major issues, which is outside, ways to get in contact with me, and also my end of session mailers. So you can see what's important to me for Connecticut.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that we are also live streaming tonight from Nancy on Norwalk. Thank you, Nancy on Norwalk, for being here. Do we have any questions ready to go back there? Oh, thank you very much. Okay, the first question will go to Mr. Roberts. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. With the ICE threat level increasing in the country, what are you doing to strengthen the Trust Act? ICE was reportedly in Norwalk yesterday, and the level of fear in our community is real. You have 1 minute.
I love that. So to answer the question, because I'm pretty sure I know who asked the question, but I think for us, I think the Trust Act in general was a big thing for us this past session. So working with, being on judiciary, we're trying to get it as strong as we can get, and respectful, I'll be honest, which was kind of watered down for a lot of people that stated that. But for us, I think we're looking at it as a delegation to see what we can do to move it forward. Kind of the first incident that happened, I received a call, went straight downtown at the time, and I was with a couple of our colleagues in the state, in the city as well. And then we actually led a whole protest that same day as well. But I think making sure people are aware of this. So we're working together to try to get this, situated. I come from 2 parents that are immigrants. I tell my parents all the time, make sure you walk out the house with the actual IDs and your passports. My mom and dad is from Jamaica. My dad is from Antigua. The accents are still strong after spending 30, 40 years, and it's scary. So for me, it hits very much differently. So but for us, I know that we're gonna take it on on our chest and make sure we work hard on it this next session.
Okay, thank you. Going down, we'll go to your right. That's how we'll move it. Okay, go ahead. Ms. Johnson,
Oh, on that question.
Uh-huh.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yep.
Yes,
30 seconds.
thank you. Thanks, Laura. To add to what Rep. Roberts said, we've been hearing from folks in our community here in Norwalk, especially, and it is affecting businesses in Westport too. Most of the labor in Westport is dependent on folks who either can still afford to live in Norwalk or they commute in by bus primarily from Stamford or Bridgeport. So this is a regional issue. It's not just a Norwalk Stamford issue. And so we're going to look perhaps to see if there are other things we can do to protect people I know the strength of the protections in the state buildings is still an ongoing question. A lot of this, I'll just say, has to do, and I'll close on this, with the fact that we also have kids that are being kept home from school. We have people who can't go to work. And so I've just been really proud of watching the community take care of people with groceries and other mutual aid. And I think it's important for us to thank and honor that and thank the community for stepping up for one another.
Thank you. Mr. Duff.
Well, it's hard to answer this question in 30 seconds about ICE and kind of the destruction of and the erosion of our democracy as we're seeing it today over the last year. But I will tell you that in Connecticut, we did update the Trust Act in our session last year. We updated the Trust Act once again in our special session. And I have said that as part of a democracy agenda, that it's important for us to hold ICE accountable in our state. And if that includes bringing them under state law and in state court if necessary for civil and for criminal violations. We're researching that right now. We've been looking at that very closely for the last few weeks as to what we can do. And we'll continue to research that to make sure that one, we don't put public in danger, but two, we also hold ICE accountable at the same time.
Thank you. Ms. Marra.
Thank you very much. This is a really tough issue for many people, not just across the state of Connecticut, but across the country. So I understand this is in the news a lot for you, and seeing it in your own town, it's really frustrating because your neighbors and your friends are subject to fear, which is unfortunate. I would like to go a different route moving forward with the Trust Act. I think that there can be a better alliance with the state and the national government to make sure that if we are deporting people, they are the people that absolutely are criminals, and that we're not catching anybody in the crossfires. I think the Trust Act can be changed, and I think we can actually increase that conversation with the federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Sims.
Thank you. As many of my colleagues stated earlier, it's a very touchy position that we're in as a state. We have to try to be creative when we start talking about the federal government and maybe looking at policies that would maybe even implicate some of the ICE agents. And holding them accountable. We put in a lot of policies such as not wearing masks and going into courthouses and places of this nature. But it seems that ICE is kind of falling on deaf ears with that, and we're going to probably go back into session. Well, this session we're going to really be having a conversation around really holding them accountable. Maybe again, maybe looking at ways of maybe arresting some of the bad actors and
Thank you.
holding them accountable. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Ms. Dathan.
Thank you so much for the question. I'm not going to repeat everything that my colleagues have said, but I think we can all agree that everyone who is going through this and is facing issues with ICE needs to have due process. Every citizen, every resident, every person in our country needs to have due process when it comes to facing our judicial system. And I think it is important that we as a legislature stand up for that process for everybody and ensure that we are doing what we can to facilitate that.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Duff first. What steps are being taken to ensure a safe experience for voters during the midterm elections?
Well, it's a good question. One of the things I know that we have not done is we have not handed over our voter file to the federal government as was demanded by the Trump regime, and which would weaken our own election integrity here in the state of Connecticut. I think that was what we're seeing is we are seeing erosions to our democracy, whether it's with ICE agents who pull over American citizens, whether it's trying to get the voter files, whether it's trying to connect various databases or target people who may have different views than what we see in Washington. So we have very strong laws here in Connecticut. We have good election laws. We have election integrity here. I think the best thing that we can do is to make sure that we don't succumb to bullying by the administration down in Washington, and that we hold strong and hold fast to our own laws here in the state.
Thank you, Ms. Marra.
Well, I think it's clear that we have election issues here in the state of Connecticut. And we need to do more to protect them. There is an issue, the biggest issue I will say is with our absentee ballot. We now have early voting in the state of Connecticut, and that, there were hitches along the way. There were little glitches, which we need to tighten up, but that is a great way to come in and get your vote early. But in fact, we do have issues with the absentee ballots. And I mean, if you read the papers and see what's going on at Bridgeport, you know this has been going on a while, and we need to keep on this because we need to have free and fair elections.
Thank you. Mr. Sims.
Oh, thank you. I will say that our elections here in Connecticut, we put in so much work to try to make sure that we have a free and fair election. It's unfortunate it's not going to ever have a perfect system one way or another. You see what's happening in Bridgeport and some other towns, but I think as a state as a whole, I think we're holding the line to making sure that everyone has access to voting. That and whether that's you're doing it by early voting or whether you're out of state and you're able to sit in your absentee ballot. We're trying to be creative to making sure that we are giving people the option to make sure that everyone has that's part of that process of voting. So we take that near and dear, and we'll continue to advocate and work hard on that.
Thank you, Ms. Dathan.
Thank you very much for the question. Connecticut historically has had some of the most restrictive voting laws in our country. And here we are tonight with the League of Women Voters, not just supporting women getting to vote, but in terms of making sure that the access to vote and the access to the ballot is able to be enjoyed by all citizens of our country and of our state. And ensuring that we make it applicable for everybody who wants to vote and to participate in democracy should be able to do so. We need to make sure that we open up our no excuse absentee balloting to ensure that, as in many states around the country, red and blue states alike all have this access. And I think it's important that we as Connecticut have that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
I think that what we did recently in this past 2 sessions ago, we enacted early voting in the state of Connecticut. I believe we were like 14 states left to do it. That showed the voter percentile and voter engagement to come out was amazing. And if I'm not mistaken, Norwalk, Connecticut was the highest early voting in the state of Connecticut. So you got to understand where you guys are at today and the city that you guys represent. So that shows that we're doing it. So when we talk about safety, that shows that our people in this room are going out early to vote. And that's what matters, So I think that we work with, our very own Stephanie Thomas, of course, and everybody, my colleagues that's on GAE to, create, more forms of safety. But I do not always want to look at the bad. I always want to give you guys your flowers and understand that Norwalk, Connecticut, early voting was the highest voting in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Being on GAE, I know we're looking forward to some bills that will implement what the voters decided very overwhelmingly. I think, I don't remember the margin, last year, right, for the absentee, no excuse absentee. How that's going to play out, we have yet to fully hear from our chairs. I think we're waiting. In many ways, the Secretary of the State is going to give a lot of input into that, right, as we should, as a partner on that committee. One thing I do want to mention in particular for 30 seconds, I already got stopped, sorry. Deep fakes in elections. I think that's a really important topic. It affects every voter. It affects everyone running for office, regardless of your party, because it could happen to anybody. And it's a really important issue for dis and misinformation for the voter. So I think that's something we're going to have to start looking at, as the effective AI deep fakes.
Okay, thank you so much. We're gonna keep moving. There's a couple of other typical kinds of this question in the pipeline, so there'll be a chance to weigh in on again. The next question goes to Mr. Sims first. Are you ready, Mr. Sims?
I'm ready.
Okay. What are you going to do with regulating the charges to customers by Eversource, who is now charging more for delivery than services? I have called the State Regulatory Commission and they say it's been passed by the legislature. Mr. Sims, go for it.
Well, we did pass some policies and legislation around that. It's still a work in progress. We're still looking to make sure that we are protecting Connecticut residents first, whether that's Eversource or any other company, electric company out there. We want to make sure that we're lowering the cost of electricity here in the state, and we want to make sure that we're looking at every possible means to address that. We have I've worked with a couple of my colleagues to really push some of those policies through, and we look forward to this session. Well, since this is a short session, it's not many new bills that we'll be working on, but you know, this is one of the bills that we certainly will be having some attention to and trying to address. As again, it's going to be a continued work in progress, and we'll continue holding the line with Eversource and that, you know, try to raise the rent on or electric rates on our customers.
Ms. Dathan.
Another really important question. I know one of the big issues I receive from folks is the electricity cost. And I think as someone that deals with government oversight, ensuring that people have faith in our regulators, we need to ensure transparency so that people understand what is going into our electric bills and the policies that are behind it. Next to what's going on with their electricity bills, the second most topic for me is how we're dealing with clean energy and how we're getting to be carbon neutral. And that is very important as a coastal city like Norwalk. And we want to make sure that our coasts are clean and free of carbon emissions and as much clean energy as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
I think that from what I know and my colleagues, we're gonna always push to work hard with you guys on this one. I know that we did move our problematic charges out of the bills, and we created a better oversight for new charges. And one thing that we did do as well is we used some state financing to pay down the COVID era back pays and storm related costs. So that was a big thing. But, you know, so that wasn't passed on to other, you know, ratepayers. But like my colleagues did say, just moving forth that needed to work hard with one another is very much key when it comes to Eversource and stuff like that.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Moving forward, I think we have to keep pressure on ourselves and on all of the stakeholders to keep delivering for people. We did provide relief for a few months, and now that it's cold out, our bills, it almost looks as if, you know, it's like we're pushing the boulder up the hill, right? One thing I will say is, while we got the public benefits charge down to 12 to 15% of the bill, because it was getting astronomical for so many of us, the delivery charges are ultimately still a huge problem. please reach out to us because there are payment plans. We also have ideas, I think, in many ways to get more solar into people's homes, like plug-in solar that could provide you some relief, and you may not have to put like the huge panels on your roof. So these are ways, like Lucy said, that we're really trying to make sure that you have choice in this regulatory environment that's really unfriendly. I'd like to think that we can kind of co-construct some things in Connecticut, even though the federal government is really coming down on clean energy and removing incentives for consumers in particular.
Thank you very much. Mr. Duff.
Okay, so talking energy policy in 30 seconds. So I used to chair the Energy Committee a long time ago, and this is a very complicated piece of policy. However, we did work last year more recently on Senate Bill 4, which I'm sure Representative Marra can talk about. She was instrumental in helping pass that as a ranking member. But we did take a lot of charges and put that on our state bonding, which is in the hundreds of millions of dollars to save ratepayers substantial amounts of money for that. So I think we have been really working hard to take the lead, take action, and to work it. The legislature did not pass a rate increase. That is done by the regulatory body, not the legislature. We don't vote on rates. But I will say also, we also have an administration in Washington that is raising our electric prices, whether it's cutting Revolution Wind to the tune of, and they cut that, and it cuts off our, increases prices. Their tariffs have increased our prices. It's cost $1 million a day when twice now they've cut Revolution Wind. Not sure what they're going to do with the Quebec down to
Thank you.
down here for the Hydro Quebec. Thank you. And so all those things we just keep seeing increased charges. That's not from the state, it's from the federal government. And that's including increasing prices for average consumers.
Thank you. Ms. Marra.
Thank you. I agree with Senator Duff. Energy is really too hard to do in 30 seconds. I actually would recommend you take a look at my Instagram post back from March of this year, and I actually break down the bill for you. Yeah, local delivery is high. One of the things we do have to think of when we're looking at energy policy is kind of balancing that clean energy to make sure we have clean air with affordability and reliability. And that was the number one thing we were looking at this year. Was it really? Where to go?
You can finish your sentence. Go ahead. Go ahead. You can continue. Don't worry about it. Keep going. Finish your
It's
sentence.
important for you to know that on the public benefits portion of your bill, the legislative contracts that we have, I call them legislative contracts. These are things that have been passed in the House and the Senate for the last like 20 years, is actually 10% of your bill. And I think that's important for you to understand. Many of them are clean initiatives. I'm not saying we have to go back on them necessarily, but when we look at these, you have to understand that those are initiatives, that portion is from the legislative body. The local delivery, like Senator Duff said, that doesn't come from us. That comes from PURA. And just to let you know, I did meet with the new commissioners. It has been crazy contentious with the PURA regulators. You've seen that they should not be in the news. Honestly, this has gotten out of control. PURA should not be going against the utilities. They should be working together. The point of the regulator is to assure affordability and reliability in your bill. They don't work for green energy. They don't put in policy. That's just not their job. I met with the new regulators and I was so impressed. They come from all different backgrounds. You've got someone from finance. You've got someone that is from academia that has a water background. You've got a legislator that was on the finance committee, so understands how things work in the state of Connecticut. And then, and then you've got someone that came from OCC, which is the consumer portion of and the energy sector. So I think I'm really excited moving forward. Hopefully they'll be out of the news and we can actually get our bill down.
Thank you very much. And we're moving on. Next question goes to Dominique Johnson first.
Ready?
As I-95 runs through 15 states, how is it that Connecticut government is the only one of those states not to raise revenue from highway tolls.
I knew that's where that was coming. All right. I had a brief conversation today with many of our chairs up in Hartford. One of them, the transportation chair. We're not gonna bring a toll bill out. I can say right now, that's just not gonna happen this session. I think this would have to be something looking forward that the governor would have to want to take up as well. The question then becomes, how we generate revenue on these roads with the trucks in particular. And that's an outstanding question, but I think not to, it's a short period of time to talk about this because this is yet another issue of how do we deal with clean air. What I will say is it sounds like we're going to try to bring together like a transportation and environment bill about the Clean Air Act, given the fact that the federal government has rescinded a lot of the Clean Air Act federally, that the state is now going to try. We're going to try to do and fortify our own Clean Air Act. But I mean, not to beat around the bush, I don't think tolls are on the menu for a short session right now.
Thank you.
But we could follow up later, but frankly, that's a question better suited for the transportation chair. I think the governor would have to be on board, and I haven't had a conversation with him about it. So, yeah.
You have 5 other people to answer that question, so.
Yeah, I just say,
I can get an answer for you.
I mean,
I can't telepathically get the answer from her.
well, I just don't think the votes are there right now. And the governor proposed it years ago. It took a long time and it never happened, and it hasn't resurfaced again as an issue. And so I just don't, the votes nobody's counted the votes in a long time because that's been an issue in a long time. But last I knew, votes weren't there to pass it.
Thank you, Ms. Marra.
This does seem to be a Fairfield County versus the rest of the state kind of thing. This is even, Republicans that I've talked to are asking me why we're not doing this, but the rest of the state is kind of a no-go, and they're really hardcore about it.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
Yes, I would say, as a former vice chair of transportation, that it was kicked around for quite some time, and we looked at even maybe talking about having lock boxes in certain sections throughout the state to help pay for transportation of roads and things of that nature. However, as Senator Duff alluded to, there hasn't been an appetite for it for the last few years, and we don't see it really coming back. And even if it did, we don't think that it will have the support of many of our colleagues. So, but with that said, I look forward to, if it does come forward, to having that conversation and hopefully looking for meaningful ways to get it addressed and moving it forward.
Thank you, Ms. Dathan.
Thank you. I agree with everything that my counterparts here have said. I will add that we do need to be thinking about how we are going to fund our transportation in our area. Representative Roberts talked about how trucks do 70 times more damage than the normal cars do. Many people in our communities are moving from gas cars to electric cars, which you don't pay a gas tax on. So we do need to figure out how we are going to keep our transportation fund, which is a separate fund outside of the general fund that funds transportation. The gas tax is currently funding it, but the whole fund, according to the Office of Fiscal Analysis, the whole fund will be insolvent in the next sort of 2 to 3 years. So this is going to be a question of how we're going to address that.
I wanted to just work with everybody at the Capitol on this one. For me, I call Senator Duff all the time, and I talk about this to him. And it's honestly the truth, guys. We don't have the votes, but I'm honestly, I'm a young guy, so I don't like to pay car tax like that, and that's something that can offset the car tax, So something like this is just like key and dear to me. And then I did read the reports before I got to the Capitol because this was a hot topic. I did hear about 50 tolls at one point or 70 tolls at one point. I mean, but we are in Fairfield County, so just imagine if we got the most wealthiest or expensive McDonald's in Darien, and all these cars are coming through our city. I mean, our state, and we call it the freeway for a reason, you
Thank
know? So, I think I'm open to the conversation, 100% open to the conversation. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, next question goes to Ms. Marra first. Medical, what? Dominique had the first question. Yeah, so I have a system, believe me, believe it or not, I have a system. Okay, the next question. And actually Ms. Marra has been given more time. She's in the minority here. I feel that we need to balance it out a little bit for her, give her a little bit of a leg up on some of these, just so you know, that's why I'm doing that, trying to be fair here. Okay, so next question goes to you first, Ms. Marra. Medical aid in dying, AKA death with dignity, has been introduced in Connecticut for 20 years. What can you do to help pass this legislation and give those with terminal illness peace and choice to shorten their suffering?
How many seconds do we have?
You have a minute. You have a minute.
So I'm not, this is, I sit on public health, so thank you for whoever who gave me that question. And yeah, I lost my father to cancer, and I watched him die, and I watched him suffer. So my heart is there. I understand what a painful time this is for people. And the stories that we hear come before us are horrific and heart-wrenching. And when you make legislation on this, that's a whole new can of worms. We got far enough in legislation 2 years ago. We didn't hear it last year, to where we were at a point where if one person had control over aid and dying, then there was a possibility that someone else in the family could sue that person. And there are so many legislatively, like, this is not just about love and wanting to do something. This is about putting something in law and making sure that you're not creating a vulnerable spot for that person that's helping making this decision. And we didn't find the balance 2 years ago. I'm not sure if it's going to come up again, but it's not, do we want to, it's not, do we support it? It's how can we get there to support that person that's making that horrific decision, that they're not going to have liabilities to them, and that we're not allowing people to do something that is beyond what this should be called for. It's a tricky balance.
Thank you. Mr. Sims.
Yes, I was around when that bill first came about for aid and dying, and I had mixed emotions about it. And I you know, as a Christian and as a person who had elderly parents or elderly mother previous to her passing, it was a trying subject for me. But initially, I didn't support the aid and dying, you know, for various reasons. But for this past year, when to see my mother suffer in the hospital, and she was just like, she was ready to go. And for me, I selfishly was like, I didn't want to support or I selfishly didn't want to see her go. But having a particular bill like this in place, I think that it would really have served a good purpose to help individuals like my mother that was suffering, and it was in a bad place. And so if this bill came before us again, I think I will support it, because I think these people these individuals have a right to make that decision on whether or not they want to have a end of life, and they don't want to suffer anymore. So
Thank you.
again, thank you for that question, but that is a touchy question for me, and I'm sure it is for many of my colleagues here today.
Thank you, Ms. Dathan.
Thank you. It's a deeply personal question, and I think, you know, we need to allow people compassion when it comes to these sort of decisions. And as it is personal for an individual and for a family, I think it is something that touches the heart. But we are one of a handful of states that don't have any ability to do so. And there are many states in the country that have gotten this right. And I think there is an opportunity for Connecticut to put the guardrails on such a piece of legislation to ensure that people do have dignity in death and they have control over it, especially when they're in such a debilitating condition. And just so folks know, if people want to learn more about this, there is a film next week that is going to be talking about this issue. And it is something that many of us legislators, it's not red or blue issue, are deeply care a lot about. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
I definitely deeply care a lot about this, this bill. I think it's very much dear to a lot of us, especially our delegation. But I do also gotta make people aware. It's 151 people downstairs, 36 upstairs. You're looking at a lot of different mindsets when it comes to this. You know, it's not just yes or no, you know. So for me, I definitely want to see this bill. But also, you know, I'm willing to work with all my colleagues on it.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
The personal nature of this, I think all of us have lost someone in some point, or we will, who's important to us. And if you've ever had to make that decision for somebody else, there is that piece of this where you want people to be able to make the choice themselves. Like, it is a personal choice. That I think I have been really, really impacted by not just personal experience, but stories of a West Porter. I think the film that that's in the Norwalk Library next week, a West Porter who I met, made the decision with her family, with her children, with her husband to move to Vermont. Because they do have this medical aid in dying. And bless you. And she would have liked to have stayed in Connecticut, and she was an advocate. But I think what that tells me is that it was her choice to make with her family, and she could do it on her own terms. We're going to need to learn from Oregon. We're going to need to learn from Vermont. And I know that having family in other states, like, this is something they felt was giving them peace of mind, even though they never used it or had to use it. So I think that there are a lot of, like Lucy said, a lot of ways that we have to learn from what other states have done, and make sure. It's very tricky because it triggers, I think, like Tracy said, a change in some of our laws around end of life.
Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Thank you. You know, as Representative Dathan said, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It is a personal issue. And a lot of times for legislators, they need time to kind of process this and be able to kind of understand it better, need to talk to constituents about it. For me and my journey on this, when I first heard about it, you kind of take a step back and you're like, you know, it's a lot of, it's a big deal to pass something like this that gives people that opportunity to do something that would be final. However, when you hear the stories, like we've heard a little bit here, but you hear stories in public hearings on the suffering of people at the end of their lives, and the wish by some that their lives would just end so they would not be in so much pain. And the fact that sometimes we put animals in less pain than we do humans, that we should be thinking about whether or not what we're doing is humane to our fellow people, our neighbors.
Thank you.
And so that's why this is something that it takes a lot, and people have to think it through and be very, very comfortable with whatever decision they make.
Thank you very much. Next question goes to you, Ms. Dathan. How does handing over voter rolls to the federal government erode democracy?
Well, there's always voter intimidation. If our federal government knows how people are registered, there could be voter intimidation that comes out. And now we have a, Republican, led, federal government. What's gonna happen if there's another side comes in and that information, how are people gonna feel on each side of the issue? So I do think that we need to understand that, voting is something that is, a right for people who are citizens of our country. And we need to ensure that our elections are safe and secure. And we also need to make sure that voters do not feel intimidated by folks out there that might not be feeling that having this information is, they could use it to their disadvantage. So it's really about security in terms of people feeling safe and secure to exercise this.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
I think that voting is a great thing to do, and I think that us on this side need to promote this more and more. But also our colleagues need to promote it as well, to where we're getting everybody to go out there and vote. And voting engagement is the best thing as well. So I think that nobody should be scared to do anything, but we also do need to protect, our voting rights, of course, but also need to protect ourselves. But that's definitely.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
I think, like Lucy said, data to me is very key. There's a lot of data that is digitally stored that has to be secure. And our voting data and our personal data, even if it's just our voter registration, that's really personal data that we trust that a government entity is going to really take care of it. And as we saw in the early days of the federal administration, specifically with Doge, like I think a lot of the safeguards on data were being questioned as kind of, people pulling data sets and aggregating them all together, and then was it safe anymore? And I'm not quite sure where we landed in terms of what data was kind of put together from what data set yet. I need to look into that, but I think that's a really good example of why we sometimes have silos of data. So you can't have identity theft or fraud. You can't
Thank you.
have data being, edited, right, as to anything from your registration, how you vote.
Thank you. Mr. Duff.
I think the fundamental of the question is that the Constitution says states run elections. That's bottom line. States run the elections, not the federal government. And what we've seen with this regime that's in Washington right now is the collection of data into lists that sometimes go to the highest bidder, or go to actors who want to track people, or who want to use the data, I think, in mischievous ways. Can you imagine if Barack Obama or Joe Biden asked every state for the voter list? The howling that would happen on Fox News. I mean, give me a break. But the states run the elections. And I mean, here's what I think any American should fear is that the voting data file from Connecticut goes to Washington, that then gets cross-matched with the IRS data, that then determines who gets an audit, or the Democrats who may have not voted for Donald Trump. That's why the states run the elections.
Thank you. Ms. Marra.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How does handing over voter rolls to the federal government erode democracy?
It absolutely does not.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Sims.
I do believe that it does erode our democracy, because I think it's when you take that data and you use it to weaponize against individuals to take away their liberties, take away their rights. I don't think that's right. And as a society, as a state, that is our fundamental right, is to be able to vote and not be pressured to vote, not be scared to vote. And for having our data going to Washington, I think that is doing a disservice to our Constitution. It's doing a disservice to our rights to vote. And when you have folks that are afraid to go and vote based on fear attacks because they're afraid that they'll, ICE is gonna jump out and throw them into a truck or potentially kill them just because they're trying to vote. That's systematic. There's something is wrong with that. And I think as a society and as a state, we have to do everything in our power to protect the voters' rights and their and who they vote for. So that is my position. And I don't think that the federal government that data should be turned over to federal government the way it currently is. So
Thank
that's my
you.
question. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's my
Next
answer.
question goes to you first, Mr. Roberts. What is the legislature planning to do to combat the threat of bad actors using AI and the building of huge data centers in our state?
So we had I think that we're working hard right now and about this big AI bill. We have in the Connecticut General Assembly, we have basically a trailblazer that's going around the country actually, Senator Maroney, who is like the key guy at this AI tactic. He's working hard at AI, but as far as us, we try to have a AI bill come through. It did not hit the floor. And like I tell everybody all the time, AI is a big thing. It is something that we don't truly all know about, and we're working hard to try to find out what it is about. But I think once we get it and we actually use it to the advantage of just in general the day-to-day lifestyle, I think that we'll be in a great place. But as far as like a bill, creating a bill, there was a bill. I think it was this past session, but it just did never hit the floor because we didn't have both chambers, but also the governor was not too in favor of it, and he just wanted to look into it and work hard on it.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
One thing we did manage to pass, which I think was a really singular thing that was important, especially to Norwalk high school students that came to testify, was deep fake, explicit deep fakes. It's really affecting their generation. So that was, I think, one small step in this movement toward figuring out how to better protect us as not only consumers, but as human beings in a potentially really exploitative social media environment. I think what we're going to move toward here in this next session are looking at chatbots. We know we've had a lot of issues with people's mental health. Chatbots are, I believe, AI driven. And another thing as well to make sure that we have, I'm not remembering, but I think that there's one more piece to an AI bill that I think we have some consensus on that can move us forward, especially when it comes to consumers knowing that they're actually interacting with AI and not a human being.
Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Thank you. I think there's good parts of AI, and we shouldn't fear AI, but I think we're making a huge mistake by not putting parameters around AI. And that this is an area that I disagree with the governor, because we have passed in the state Senate twice now, very comprehensive AI bills. Not putting guardrails around this technology is a huge, huge mistake. I will say that in my capacity as Vice President of the National Conference of State Legislatures, we fought and won with Congress on not putting a moratorium for 10 years on the state's rights ability to regulate AI. And I thought we did that on a bipartisan basis, which was really great. I hope that we have another strong bill again this year. I hope the governor will come along with it, but people are rightly concerned about this issue and this technology and the fact that government is not keeping up enough with the technology, and that we're putting Americans at risk by not having any guardrails.
Ms. Marra.
Yeah, another really big topic. You've got, data centers, which is honestly a whole other topic on its own, but hitting the AI portion. One of the great things that you should know about the state of Connecticut is that we have really good data privacy laws already in place. And that's kind of the first step that you need before you even move into a lot of the AI regulation. And Connecticut was in the forefront of doing that. So, and you are ahead of many other states in that regard. So feel good about that. When it comes to AI, looking at whether the state of Connecticut should be the one that creates boundaries for AI, and then all the other states around us do not, that's a little bit of an issue. That's one of the reasons why I want to move carefully with AI regulation, and I agree with the governor, because when you are competing with all the other states, it really needs to be a holistic view with all the states. Or one of the things we had recommended is have like a trigger. If you have X amount of states join in, when you have this type of regulation, then you can push through the legalization of whatever we're trying to do. But if you're the only singular state, guess what you're going to be assured of? You're not going to get businesses come to your state.
Thank you. Mr. Sims.
Thank you. I personally, I like the AI, and I think that it's something that's great. It's a new phenomenon throughout the world, and I think Connecticut, by us, when we first put forth that legislation to implement AI, and we have some guardrails around that to protect AI, especially with children. By the governor not signing it, I think that it put us in a very vulnerable spot. And I think we have to be leaders here in the state, not just here in the state, but in the nation. And it seems like Connecticut, we always hold ourselves back from putting forth good policies, such as guardrails around AI. But when other states do it, then it's like we're playing catch up. So we have to do a better job as a whole, whether it's the governor, whether it's the House, or whether it's the Senate. We have to do a better job as a whole to protect our data, but also making sure that when we have new technology that's coming to the state, that we're doing everything to look through it with a fine-tooth comb, and making sure that when we're implementing to our state, that everyone will feel comfortable and safe all the way around with using it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dathan.
Thank you very much. I know, there are many countries around the world that are attacking this, and I think really the issue comes down to transparency. People, consumers, our elderly population, our disabled population, our young people need to understand when AI is being used. So I think it's an issue of transparency, and I think we need to be addressing this for that consistency. There is a very good Office of Legislative Research report that was done back in 24 that talks about this issue, what's happening around the world, and it is talked about in this issues document. So please feel free to pick one of those up and learn a little bit more about this, because we are very lucky in our state to have Senator Maroney, who's been a national leader in this issue, and like to move this forward.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question goes to Mr. Duff first. Do you think Connecticut's voter ID requirements are adequate? If not, how should they be changed?
Yeah, I think they're adequate. I think we have a good system in place, and that it does provide safe, secure elections, and that we try to make voting secure, but we also try to make sure that we're not hampering elections or people's ability to vote, like in other states where they do everything they can to try and curb voting participation. So yeah, I think I think one of the things we do have to do this year is to codify what was passed by voters on our changing our state constitution, which is no excuse absentee balloting.
Thank you. Ms. Marra.
I think when you show up at the polls and you vote in person, we see that the identification of people is adequate there. Where we seem to have problems is in the absentee ballot, because there is not an ID that's shown when you submit an absentee ballot. So, and that seems to be what gets us in trouble across the state. When there is an issue, it almost always goes back to the absentee ballot issue. So I would like to see that cleaned up, especially knowing that we have early voting that can basically take its place.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
Yes, I'm in agreement with Tracy on that piece of legislation. I think that the voter ID in Connecticut is very strong. And, however, I do believe that we have to do everything to, around it to protect it. And when it comes to, the absentee ballots aspect of it, there seems to be, a very tainted line, where folks are being able to try to manipulate that process. So I do agree with her on that, and I'd like to see as we move forward that we are putting parameters in place and safeguards in place to protect the voter rights all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dathan.
Again, thanks for this question. In terms of absentee voting, in our state, we do register, when we register to vote, we do need to prove, who we are and how, we are eligible to be able to vote because we're citizens and proof of citizenship. When people do vote by absentee, they are, register for the absentee ballot. And there are various numbers of steps that voters have to take when they do send in their absentee ballot. A number of envelopes with, if you are the town clerk or the town registrar, it's a lot of administrative burdens on them. But the day-to-day voter ID that you give when you go to the polls, either early or on the day, are more than adequate. And I do see that we could run into an issue where people who do not have a driver's license or a state ID or can't afford that
Thank you.
is a form of voter suppression.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
I do agree with my colleagues, but I do agree that it is strong. I do agree that we do a great job in the state of Connecticut when it comes to this. When you go to DMV, you get a license, you get ID. That's the first question they ask you. What do you want to vote as? I do agree with my colleagues as well. Recently at the Capitol, we worked on new tabulators. Came to the entire state of Connecticut. We appropriated money for that to make sure that's correct. So I do agree with my colleagues where it can be a mishappen, but I do agree that it is very strong in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
Like Lucy said, I've had to vote absentee when I was on vacation once, had to come in, saw Rick McQuaid, my driver's license. I think there are ways we can do this to maintain integrity and should do that. One thing I think we're waiting, the registrars of voters, ours in Norwalk, are just phenomenal. They're giving a lot of feedback all across the state to the Secretary of the State. We're waiting again. We want to hear what she has to say about this rollout. And I think it's really important, something that I find in the work that I've done with voting rights is, what is the cure process for ballot cure for absentee voting? And is that a very transparent process? Like Lucy said, we need to make sure we have this conversation in GAE this session when we're trying to roll out this massive new, really absentee, no excuse absentee is kind of putting us in step with most of the country. I think this isn't going to be Oregon where we, just only can vote by mail. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do this, right?
Okay, thank you. Next question goes to you, Mr. Sims. This is a long one, so brace yourself.
All right.
Gonna get this right. What mechanisms exist or could exist to systematically aggregate constituent concerns to track outcomes and ensure residents who don't have access can meaningfully shape legislation?
Wow.
So it's giving, how do we give constituents? Okay, you got it?
It's a loaded question.
It is.
But I think,
It's complicated.
we as a state, I think we do a pretty good job with communicating with our residents and citizens throughout the state. Through our newsletters, through social media, through our state website. I think there's different platforms that and different means of communication with the residents around the state. I think that we can continue to do more and look at meaningful ways to try to involve our constituents and continue like we've been doing over the years with having office hours and coffee hours with constituents and those that are engaged and want to be informed of a lot of the policies that and initiatives that we're working on at the Capitol in Hartford. I think that we have to continue to be innovative and allowing these folks to have access to the information. I'll continue doing everything I can, over the course of the next few months to making sure that we are engaging, that folks are part of that process. And then, so again, thanks again for that question.
Thank you, Ms. Dathan.
Great question. I think in hindsight, we do a really good job of saying what happened in our session. This is mailed to every single resident in our state, and it's not dependent on how you were registered. I think, the issue comes when issues come up and people want to figure out how that they can engage. And I think the General Assembly here in Connecticut has actually done a fantastic job, and we've really seen it since COVID started, in that we offer an opportunity for folks to testify via Zoom or in person. Before, there was only, one sort of opportunity for folks to have their say on forming legislation, and that was coming up to Hartford. Now you can send in a letter, you can participate via Zoom, or you can come to the Capitol. You can also utilize some of the nonprofits and other sort of advocates all over the state to ensure that people know what's going on in our state. But as a legislator, I mean, we all try our best to ensure that everyone in our communities has access to information. But I do think engaging with more opportunities for libraries to receive some sort of grant funding to understand what issues are important to folks.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
I believe we do a great job at the state level, especially in our jobs. Like my colleague said, whether it's mailers, whether it's coffee hours, whether it is social media platform, that's a big thing. For me, it's a big thing because, that's where I feel like we touch a lot of people. Everybody's on the Facebook, everybody's on LinkedIn, everybody's on whatever you could think of. So that's big for us. But as far as, getting to the grassroots, I do see my colleagues all the time at every event in the city, in the state, knocking on doors. We don't just knock on doors respectfully. We don't just knock on doors when it's election time. These people that you see on this table are really outside on a regular basis. So that's the biggest part that I can always say about my delegation. We're always in front of you. You know us. If you don't know us, we're going to make sure you get to know us.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
I think this is a wonderful question because it reminds me in so many ways, what we do together gives me hope, especially in this time, that we can still be in civil conversation about what matters most to us on a daily basis. You see us at the grocery store, you see us at events, you see us at our coffee hours, and I want everyone to know that it's never a bad time to bring an idea for a bill to us. Doesn't matter if we've already locked in and we're like 3 days away from gaveling out, just bring us the idea. It may take us a little longer to write if we're like staying up, 14 hours at the Capitol, but we will hear you. I mean, we all go through our inboxes. So I'd like to remind people too that it can sometimes take time. Like I just got stopped. I know, I'm sorry. Somebody wrote me about a bill about animal adoption. We were able to get it passed in one session. It's great, but that's because dogs and cats are awesome. Some things are going to take longer, but we can't start the process until you let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Thank you. Yes, dogs and cats are awesome. More dogs. I would say this is that Connecticut is a very open and transparent state. There's state legislatures around the country that have closed hearings that don't even invite the public. There's legislatures in the country that only have invited guests, almost like Congress does. We have hearings that sometimes will go from 10 in the morning till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning to make sure everybody has their say. And legislators actually read and listen to all of that testimony. So I sometimes say it's easier to fight the state legislature than it is to fight City Hall, because you really have folks who are sitting in hearings listening to lots of things. Can't take a little longer. But I would say that also you have to balance that out with the fact that we're a part-time legislature. And we are also trying to do our best with our legislature and our other jobs and trying to balance all those things. But we have like these events like this where we listen and we listen to questions, where we're in the grocery stores, where we're online, wherever we are. But I think that having districts that are either 25,000 residents or 100,000 residents like I have, provides that opportunity where we get to know our constituents and people can feel comfortable contacting us. And when people call me at home, reach out to me on social media, they reach out to me online and email, or they stop us anywhere. But all those things are ways in which I think, unlike in California, where a state senator has a district that I think is 900,000 people versus 500,000 people, it's a lot easier to be more intimate that way and to understand what's on the minds of voters when you have a district that is a little bit more manageable that way.
Thank you. Ms. Marra.
Thank you. I think whoever asked that question, I think it really goes back to you. What do you need to know from us? There is a learning curve of understanding, one, who is your legislator, who's your representatives. Sometimes people don't exactly know who their representative is, who their senator is. And then if they want to find out when something is happening, there's a learning curve to, one, either just asking that person or finding it yourself on the website. And it is easy to navigate, but someone kind of has to show you the first time around. So I would say whoever asked that question, I would rather hear from you what you need to know.
Thank you. Moving on. This question goes to you, Ms. Johnson. And this may, not everybody might need to weigh in on this one. It's more of a clarification about ICE and what, for those who do not know, what is the Trust Act?
Okay, even a minute on that.
I have a minute.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, well, someone who was in the legislature when that was first passed can pick up this part of it, because I'm not sure when it was first passed, but I can tell you it has really come into part of our state conversation, particularly last year when we knew that there would start being more aggressive immigrations and customs enforcement across the country, right? So it fundamentally means that it puts, and I presume the trust is not just an acronym, it's literally so that people in the community can trust law enforcement, right? Not to immediately hand them over to federal immigration authorities if it's not like a serious crime. Like we put into the Trust Act provisions this past year, added protections for people from really vicious crimes, right? So I think that's important to mention. Well, what this does is this mainly, I think, has a net positive that people aren't afraid to go to the police station here in Norwalk if they're a victim of domestic violence. If they have issues in their home that make them feel unsafe, that they can't reach out and have our good police department protect and serve them. So I think that this, again, is a balance between making sure that really violent criminals are not given some kind of off-ramp, but at the same time, we maintain the ability for our police to not be used as, they actually have more agency is the guiding theory here, right? That they're not being commandeered by the federal government to do work that is not what state, like federal immigrations at the federal level, our police, our state and city police can enforce and protect our people.
Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Thank you. Let me just remind people that 85% of the legislation that we passed in the state of Connecticut is bipartisan and 95% of it's unanimous. And actually the other way around, I think, but this is not one of them. I will say when we first passed the Trust Act in the first Trump administration, it was bipartisan, but I think we've done 3 or so iterations since then, and they've become largely less bipartisan. But I think to Dominique's point is the fact that we're not here to deputize our federal agents. They have a job to do. Our state and local police have a job to do. And if there is reasons where our state and local police need to assist, if it's a violent crime or certain thresholds that we have placed under state law, then we have prescribed that in state law. And that's where that assistance and coordination can take place. But the problem you have is you just don't want to have where real crimes take place and people in the immigrant community are afraid to report those crimes. They become victims themselves because they don't want to report those crimes. And so therefore it makes areas more dangerous than they may have been in the first place. You don't want to have crimes go unreported. You want to have that trust between police, and the community. So that's why you let immigration deal with immigration. But I will say that the more and more I see videos coming out of Minneapolis or other places around this country, the more that I know that our Trust Act was the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Marra.
I don't completely disagree with Senator Duff. I think there is a very important line that we need to understand. And like Representative Johnson said, and like the Senator said, you absolutely do not want a woman that is being abused in her house to go into a police station because she doesn't want to lose her husband, who may be an undocumented person, right? That's a real issue, and that's breaking up families, and there needs to be solutions. I don't fully subscribe to the Trust Act because what it does is it creates a barrier between local police and the federal government from having the conversations when it does make sense. You've got someone that it really does make sense to deport them. But instead of having it be an easy process and you can come and pick them up here, you know, in the jail, wherever, where it's not at a home or not on a street and not rounding people up in an area, that to me is something that makes sense. And I feel like we can move to a better solution here in the state of Connecticut. And I don't want to see what's happening in Minnesota happen here in Connecticut, but I also think it does make sense that if we have bad actors, can we have that conversation and make this an easier process and not make it frictionless? I don't want riots. I don't want things to get crazy here.
Thank you. Mr. Sims.
Thank you. Now that's actually a really good question. The Trust Act is essentially, we put that Trust Act in place to ensure that law enforcement is serving and protecting all members of our communities around this state. I don't think it goes as far as pitting local departments against our federal government. I think what it did was we actually we put it in place and we stopped ICE and some of the other federal agents from coming into our state and being reckless. And I think that that's the right thing to do. You know, you have to have have some kind of substance of where you are addressing the concern and addressing the needs of the people of this state. And when you see ICE running rampant like they doing in Minnesota, God forbid they come here and they shoot a citizen of ours. What are we left to do?
Thank you.
What are the citizens left to do? So I think having our Trust Act in place is a good policy that's going to protect every citizen of this state.
Thank you. Ms. Dathan.
I agree that the Trust Act is something, a tool that's in place to ensure that, you know, our citizens of the state have confidence in our police and that can report crimes. But again, coming back to accountability and transparency, we need to ensure that our residents are offered due process because that is part of our Constitution. Right now, what we're seeing from ICE is constitutional infringements of residents in our state. If you went abroad and went traveling somewhere and were treated this way by another police force in a foreign country, that foreign country would be at the top of the do not travel list.
Thank you.
And that's what we're seeing from our European and other sort of global countries. People don't want to come to America because of how immigrants are being treated.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
I fully support our Trust Act. And I think for me, it hit home when it happened here in Norwalk. You know, because we were seeing it at a lot of different places around the USA. So I truly support the Trust Act, but we also seen the agents were in our police station in the parking lot, you know, and that right there was troubling to me. But I do support the Trust Act that we have. I support our local police as well, with them actually stepping in at the time and chief telling them that they had to disperse, but at the time, I definitely support our Trust Act for sure.
Thank you. This will be our last question. And it goes to Ms. Marra first. Ms. Marra, are you ready for the last question? No worries. Okay. Is there any legislation in the works regarding criminal justice reforms working with the correctional ombudsman? Is there any legislation in the works regarding criminal justice reforms?
Yeah, I'll pass it on because, and I'll let you answer it because I'm not on that committee.
Okay.
So I don't know the initial.
I too will defer to my colleague,
Okay, so I think this one goes to you, Mr.
Well, I was gonna say,
Okay, go ahead. Whoever, this is a jump ball. This is what we're doing now.
yeah, I would say I had a hearing last week over DOC and talking about how we can ensure that our Department of Corrections is acting in the way it should be. We need to ensure right now the state is paying huge amounts of claims, very large claims to people where maybe we're not following the training procedures and ensuring that our incarcerated individuals are being treated fairly. We are not adhering to inmate medical procedures and making sure that folks are given their medication on time. So there is quite a number of things that we're talking about in oversight related activities regarding the criminal justice system and how we can perform that and make it better.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Roberts?
I think, so hats off to our wonderful delegation. Last session, we all trailblazed a wonderful bill to ban handcuffs on kids 14 years and down. In the state of Connecticut, in 2021, you can arrest and handcuff a kid at 7. They moved it to 10. So when I got to the cabinet, I heard about this. I'm like, listen, no, we got to jump on this. So we jumped on this, and this is your delegation that trailblazed it. So it's the first in the nation ever. Nobody's ever done it before. So this session, I went back and sitting down thinking about something that happened the first session I got there when I first got to the Capitol. So currently, and I believe in science. So a big bill is basically strengthening fair juvenile sentencing in the state of Connecticut. Right now, we're currently giving people 30, 40 years for crimes, but we're not testing the science of the brain. Mentally, 25, 26 years old is an actual juvenile's brain when it's fully developed. A lot of people don't understand that. So this is not just you can get out of jail free card. So the bill basically states that you're allowed to see the parole board. They're allowed to just read your case because what you did at 18, at 21 wasn't you because mentally you weren't fully developed. But I definitely love to talk to people about it. Got a big press conference coming up about it at the Capitol. So that's a big bill coming up this session for me and of course for the delegation. And yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
I think that I was at that hearing that Lucy's committee had. I think that there's a lot of work that we could be doing, especially around, and I won't sell anyone's kind of, I'm not sure if we're pursuing this, but I think we're hearing of reports of sexual assault amongst incarcerated populations, especially women. We need to address this. And I just want to give Rep. Roberts his flowers because that was a phenomenal bill. So, yeah. And it shows that we care deeply about reform and reform that is empowering survivors to tell their stories, and at the same time also making sure that we respect the fact that for folks involved in the criminal justice system who are victims of crime, that everybody is brought to the table in these hearings with a voice.
Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Thank you. I want to congratulate Rep. Roberts as well on that, and just say that we've done a lot of criminal justice reform over the last decade or so, and in that time, we've seen our crime rate continue to go down. And so there is a correlation between good, smart policy reform and a reduction in crime, violent crime and nonviolent crime. Connecticut is considered one of the safest states in the nation, which I'm very proud about, which we could teach some of those quote unquote tough on crime states how to do it. Because not only is our crime down, we're closing prisons, we're saving money, and we're giving people an opportunity for a better chance in life to be taxpayers, to be homeowners, to have full employment. That's what government should be doing. And that's exactly what we've been doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, everyone. Those were great questions. And we've just, right now it's time, so perfect timing. As they have all mentioned, if you didn't have a question or you weren't able to ask it for whatever reason, please feel free to reach out to them. They're very accessible.